Last Tuesday, a guy named Derek looked at his phone screen and, without any fanfare at all, watched his net worth tip past $750,000, the single riskiest moment of his entire financial life, and he had no clue. There was no toast, no fireworks, just a quiet figure glowing on a screen. On paper, Derek is crushing it, outpacing roughly 9 in 10 American households. Yet nobody ever warns you about what this particular number actually means once you touch it.
$750,000 isn't a victory lap.
It's arguably the most dangerous sum Derek has ever controlled, because starting now, a rough week in the markets can wipe out more value than an entire month of his salary brings in.
Put simply, this portfolio can now swing by more in a single trading day than Derek's yearly savings rate could ever replace.
And here's a pattern worth knowing. Almost everyone who reaches this milestone falls into one of 3 traps. They ease off on spending discipline, they reach for a flashier return, or they hand their nest egg to a well-dressed stranger promising the moon. Derek is about to stumble into one of those 3, and he genuinely doesn't see it approaching.
Before you toast your own $750K or your $500K, keep watching, because the real arithmetic hiding behind this milestone is something almost nobody ever teaches.
Ever notice how nobody warns you about the danger zone that opens up the moment you finally feel like you've arrived?
That blind spot is exactly what today's breakdown is here to fix. So why does this particular figure behave so differently than every dollar amount that came before it?
At $10,000, one bad call costs you a dinner out. The market doesn't even blink.
At $100,000, a 10% slide means 10 grand disappears, which stings but is fixable inside a year of diligent saving.
Stretch that same 10% slide across $750K, though, and suddenly $75,000 evaporates in a matter of weeks.
For a typical worker, that figure represents more than a full year's take. Home earnings gone overnight.
This is the pivot nobody flags for you. Your own savings can no longer bail you out of a mistake. The account has simply grown too large for your paycheck to patch the hole.
Your income carried you to this first $750K, but from this point forward, your daily habits decide whether the number becomes $1 million or shrinks by half.
There's an old investing quote that the earliest 100 grand is always the hardest to build.
Whoever said it never claimed the money got any safer as it multiplied. If anything, the opposite is true.
The bigger the balance, the bigger a single misstep it can quietly swallow before you even register the damage.
A $5,000 blunder at $20,000 in net worth stings for roughly a month. That identical percentage blunder made at $750K can silently wipe out 4 or 5 years worth of disciplined effort in one stroke.
So the real stakes here have nothing to do with getting richer. They're entirely about refusing to get careless.
How would you even notice a slow leak draining a decade's worth of work before it was too late?
Let's introduce 3 composite profiles, patterns pulled from thousands of similar real stories, who all cross the identical $750,000 mark within the same 12 months.
None of them inherited serious money. None of them founded a company. First up is Nadia, 30. 2, a data analyst earning 90. $4,000 a year.
She hit this milestone a full decade sooner than most of her coworkers by investing aggressively and letting index funds run untouched for 11 straight years. As her paycheck grew over time, her spending stayed almost eerily flat. That single discipline explains her entire head start.
Next is Renee, 34, a project manager whose $750K looks identical on the surface, but hides a messier reality underneath, roughly half tied up in home equity. The rest scattered across
Accounts she rarely bothers opening. Third is Priya, 28, a nurse who inherited a portion of her fortune and built the remainder herself.
She keeps most of it parked inside a savings account, paying 4% interest, feeling entirely secure about that choice.
3 completely different people, one matching headline figure. Right now, each of their statements reads $750,000.
They've already cleared the hardest hurdle, a total most households will never see across an entire lifetime.
But fast forward 5 years, and their balances will look nothing alike. That gap is about to surprise you.
Let's run the identical market conditions across all three.
Nadia keeps 90% of her portfolio in a broad market index fund and contributes $1,200 automatically every payday.
At a typical 7% annual return, her balance roughly doubles every 10 years, hands off. Even if she never added another cent, her $750K crosses $1 million within about 4 years.
That's the quiet leverage that kicks in once you cross this threshold. Compounding starts, outpacing your own contributions entirely.
Nadia peeks at her brokerage account once a month, always the same day, then shuts the app. She has never once dumped her holdings out of fear.
Renee's path tells a different story.
Her fortune sits scattered across 5 different accounts: an old employer retirement plan, a forgotten Roth, some leftover shares of company stock, a slice of home equity, and a checking account.
Bloated with idle cash, she's never once sat down and added up what she's really paying in fees across all of it.
Buried inside her paperwork is a management fee close to 2% that she agreed to years back without reading the fine print.
On $750,000, that fee alone quietly costs her $9,000 annually.
Stretched across the next decade, that overlooked percentage will end up costing Renee well past $100,000 total. She isn't lazy or foolish, she's simply overwhelmed, and fees are engineered to stay invisible. Meanwhile, her advisor has never once outperformed a plain index fund, even before his cut comes off the top.
Priya went with what looks like the safest path of all, and it's quietly the costliest choice she could have made.
She stashed $600,000 of her $750K into a savings account, paying 4% interest.
4% feels great until inflation running near 3% takes its bite, leaving her real return barely above 1%, while Nadia's index fund keeps compounding near 7%.
Priya isn't reckless, she's simply scarred.
Watching her parents lose money during the 2008 crash taught her to equate the feeling of safety with actual safety, and inflation has been quietly picking her pocket every year since.
Stretch that gap between 1% and 7% across 2 decades, and on $600,000, it balloons into a difference topping $1.5 million.
None of these 3 people believes they're currently making a mistake, and that's precisely the danger.
Every risky choice at this stage feels sensible, comfortable, maybe even prudent in the moment.
That's exactly why crossing $750,000 quietly wrecks more fortunes than any stock market crash ever could.
The takeaway from Nadia, Renee, and Priya is straightforward. Identical numbers, wildly different daily habits underneath.
2 of them are silently drifting backward, while the third steadily compounds forward, and none of them can actually feel the difference happening in real time. At this stage, it was never about luck. It comes down to a stack of unremarkable choices made consistently year after year.
So let's map out precisely what to do the instant your own number crosses this same line.
Here's what nobody tells you up front. Your first move shouldn't be investing more. It should be locking your current lifestyle in place.
The second Derek's balance touched $750. A quiet, dangerous voice whispered inside his head, "You've made it now."
That whisper is exactly how lifestyle creep sneaks in, not through a flashy yacht purchase, but through a slightly upgraded version of everything around you.
A larger mortgage payment, a fresher car lease, a stack of subscriptions nobody remembers to cancel.
Each individual upgrade feels totally reasonable, and none of them seems capable of denting your net worth on its own. But bump your monthly spending by just $2,000, and you've quietly rerouted $4,000 every year away from your own future. Invested at 7%, that $24,000 swells into more than $300,000 across a decade.
So that nicer lifestyle doesn't really cost $2,000 a month. It costs a future $300,000.
Derek doesn't have to become a monk. He just needs his spending to stay flat for a couple more years while compounding rather than his salary. Drives the next leg toward $1 million.
People rarely torch their $750K in one dramatic crash. Instead, they drain it slowly, one perfectly justifiable purchase at a time, upgrading their way straight back toward broke.
Freezing your spending in place is quietly the most powerful lever available at this stage.
Nadia is living proof. As her paycheck climbed, her expenses simply refused to follow, and that widening gap became her entire fortune.
Now let's talk about what really happens once you start hunting for a bigger return at $750,000.
Once your account balance grows large, an ordinary 7% return starts to feel dull, and boredom gets expensive fast.
$50 plus $1,000 a year on $750K sounds impressive on paper, but rarely feels exciting watching it on a screen.
So the calls start pouring in for Derek, the emails, the buddy pitching an unmissable deal.
A charming salesman insists his account deserves better than some boring index fund, dangling a private investment promising 18%, guaranteed with virtually zero downside.
Here's a rule that never bends. The words guaranteed and 18% have no business sharing a sentence.
Every additional point of promised return conceals an additional point of hidden risk you simply can't spot yet.
People who torch their fortune at this stage rarely fall apart slowly. They blow up chasing one irresistible number.
Derek doesn't actually need 18%. He needs to hold onto the $750K he already has. Dodging one catastrophic loss matters far more right now than landing any single thrilling win.
A legendary investor's number. One rule has always been simple: don't lose the money, and rule number 2 is never forgetting rule number 1.
That unglamorous index fund sitting in Derek's account has quietly beaten nearly every flashy alternative pitched to him. When an offer sounds too good to be true, that's not opportunity calling, that's risk wearing a costume.
If the person pitching can't clearly explain exactly where the return is coming from, walk away on the spot.
Most people carrying $750K get quietly drained by something they never bother examining: fees. Recall Renee's near 2% advisory charge she barely remembers signing up for.
That's $9,000 annually, whether the market climbs or tumbles. Her advisor pockets that same $9,000 during a crash as easily as during a rally.
Stretched over 20 years, that 2% fee silently consumes roughly $300,000.
That figure isn't inflated. One overlooked percentage point cost Renee a full third of $1 million.
Fees behave like termites hidden inside a wooden frame, quiet, gradual, and devastating over enough time. Fixing this takes Renee about one afternoon. She combs through every statement, jots down every fee, learns her expense ratios, and roots out hidden charges buried in old fund paperwork. Then she shifts everything into rock bottom cost index funds charging a sliver of a percent. That single move alone saves her roughly $500 every single year going forward.
Pull up your own statements. Most folks genuinely have zero clue what they're actually forking over.
At this portfolio size, a 1% fee isn't pocket change. It functions like a second mortgage.
Put one blunt question to any advisor. In plain dollars, what does this relationship actually cost me every year?
A dodge or a shrug in response is your cue to walk. Here's a risk hiding in plain sight. Once your balance reaches this size, the order returns arrive in.
It's called sequence risk, and most free online calculators ignore it completely.
Two savers can earn the exact same average return across 20 years and still end up worlds apart, purely because of timing.
Picture two retirees, each holding $1 million, each pulling $50,000 a year, each averaging 5% annually over 2 decades.
The only variable is when the rough patches hit.
Whoever hits a downturn early can end up more than $660,000 poorer, identical average return, identical withdrawals, a gap exceeding 2/3 of a million purely from
bad timing.
Withdrawing money during a slump locks in losses that the next recovery can never fully reverse, which explains why the years surrounding retirement are the most fragile stretch of the entire
journey. If you're nearing this figure and nearing retirement simultaneously, don't default to staying fully aggressive.
Holding 1 to 2 years of living costs in cash isn't fear. Think of it as armor that keeps you from unloading stocks at exactly the wrong moment in a downturn.
A 20% slide on a portfolio worth $2 million wipes out $240,000.
The mission now isn't chasing maximum growth. It's outlasting the withdrawal timing long enough to come out on top.
Now, here's what nobody explains about taxes. Once your accounts hit this size, where your dollars actually live matters just as much as how fast they grow.
A dollar parked in a taxable brokerage, a Roth account, and a traditional retirement account are not equivalent dollars.
A Roth dollar carries more real value because its tax bill is already settled.
Most people never map out where their assets actually sit, so they end up handing the government thousands more than necessary.
Steer your fastest, growing holdings into the Roth, where future gains are never taxed again, and let slower, moving assets like bonds sit inside tax, deferred accounts, where any hit is softer.
This single reshuffle, a strategy known as asset location, can stretch your eventual retirement spending by years.
It's also worth learning tax, loss harvesting, converting a paper loss into a genuine tax, bill reduction by selling a losing position, replacing it with something similar, and banking that loss.
Offset future gains. None of this sounds thrilling, yet all of it quietly shields more of your $750K from erosion.
At this stage, the tax rulebook is either quietly working for you or quietly working against you, which one depends entirely on your choices.
So which conversation would you rather have? One afternoon with a fee, only planner today, or years of silently overpaying without ever noticing the bill?
Most people at this stage also get their cash allocation backwards, in both directions at once.
Recall Priya, sitting on $600,000 in savings, feeling responsible while inflation quietly erodes roughly 3% of it every year.
Meanwhile, someone like Derek might hold too little cash, forcing him to sell stocks during an emergency at exactly the wrong moment.
A sensible cash cushion usually lands around 3 to 6 months of living expenses, nowhere close to $600,000.
Enough to sleep soundly and survive a layoff without letting inflation feast on the rest.
Priya's fix is simple. Hold roughly $40,000 in cash and put the remainder to work across a mix of diversified investments.
Almost immediately, her money flips from bleeding value to inflation into actually outrunning it. Cash exists as an emergency tool, not a growth engine, and mixing up the two gets costly fast.
Not enough cash triggers forced, panicked selling. Excess cash quietly guarantees a slow, silent bleed instead.
The right figure is boring and precise. A handful of months' expenses, nothing more. Now here's the psychology quietly wrecking almost every seven-figure journey around this stage.
Once the number gets big enough, your mind starts treating it like a piece of identity rather than a plain account balance.
Derek starts checking his portfolio 3 separate times a day, flinching at every red number.
At this size, a routine 2% swing moves $15,000 before lunchtime, and watching that much cash flicker in real time is a fast track toward panic selling.
The investors who actually win at this stage stay almost annoyingly calm. They glance rarely and react even less often.
Nadia checks her accounts once a month. Renee trained herself to stop checking entirely during downturns. The market rewards patience and quietly penalizes anxiety. How many times today have you already refreshed a balance that hasn't meaningfully budged since the last time you looked?
Comparison is another silent trap. Once you cross this line, you start clocking everyone who has more, a friend's bigger house, a hotter stock tip, a flashier lifestyle to envy.
That comparison quietly nudges people into risks they never actually needed to take. Your 750K has zero interest in your neighbor's new boat or your cousin's crypto bet.
The only competition worth entering is your money versus your own future needs, full stop. Label the emotion the instant it surfaces greed, fear, envy, and then take no action whatsoever.
Doing nothing on purpose might be the single most underrated skill inside all of investing.
Crunch the math on the single dullest habit available, and it quietly crushes nearly every exciting alternative out there, automation.
Nadia never consciously decides whether to invest. $1,200 leaves her account automatically each month, stripping her own emotions completely out of the equation.
Isn't it strange that the single most powerful investing strategy on earth is simply refusing to make a decision at all?
Schedule contributions to trigger automatically each payday before the cash ever shows up in a spendable balance.
Automate your investing, your bill payments, even your wants, a year rebalancing, so the system keeps grinding through your most distracted, most emotional days without you.
Derek sets his accounts to auto, invests, then deliberately makes stopping the process a little annoying, removing the trading app entirely from his phone's main screen, building in extra friction.
Against every impulsive urge, the strongest portfolio isn't the cleverest one. It's simply the one you'll actually leave alone.
Here's a move almost nobody bothers making at this stage, even though it costs roughly one afternoon of effort, protecting what's already been built.
Derek has no will, no current beneficiary listings, no real plan in place. If something happened to him tomorrow, his $750K could sit frozen in probate court for an entire year.
A simple will combined with fresh beneficiary paperwork could route that money to his loved ones within weeks rather than a full year of legal delay.
An umbrella insurance policy offering $1 million of extra coverage runs roughly $200 a year, shielding his entire fortune from a single unlucky car accident lawsuit.
Most people carefully insure a $30,000 vehicle while leaving a $700,000 net worth totally exposed.
Update your beneficiaries today. Most people discover an ex, a long-gone parent, or a blank field on some forgotten account.
Protecting the downside isn't pessimism. It's precisely what lets you chase the upside with genuine confidence.
If your accounts disappeared from your memory tomorrow, would your own family even know where to begin looking?
Now for the part almost no finance channel ever admits out loud. The real threat to your $750,000 was never actually the market.
It's you, every single trap covered here, reaching for yield, letting lifestyle expand. Selling out of fear originates inside your own head, not from any outside force.
The market isn't hunting for your money. Your own impatience poses a far bigger danger than any downturn ever could. And no strategy, however carefully built, survives a panicked click on a red
Trading day, here's a twist that feels backward until you actually sit with it. The instant you cross this line, your role quietly flips from accumulator to caretaker.
For years the job was piling money on, hustling harder, pushing the balance upward. Now the balance has grown large enough that your smartest move is frequently doing almost nothing at all.
At this size, the market can move more value in a single day than you're able to save across an entire year, meaning your own savings rate can't rescue you from a mistake anymore.
All you can really do is dodge making one in the first place. Whoever sits calmly for 5 straight years usually outperforms whoever keeps fiddling with the dials.
Nadia did almost nothing at all, and her $750K is quietly tracking toward $2 million.
Renee fixed her fee problem once, then left everything else untouched, banking herself a savings equal to $350,000.
Priya made a single change, put her idle cash to work, and finally outpaced inflation for the first time in her life.
None of these three got wealthy through brilliance. They got wealthy by simply refusing to be careless.
That's the great reversal buried inside wealth building. Early on, action is what builds the fortune.
Later on, restraint is what keeps it intact. The hardest skill at this stage is learning to sit perfectly still on purpose.
Your money doesn't need your enthusiasm anymore. It needs your patience and, frankly, your absence.
Picture a tree you planted years back. Constantly digging it up to inspect the roots is the surest way to kill it.
Your portfolio behaves exactly like that tree, and obsessive checking is simply you poking at the roots out of pure anxiety.
The wealthiest investors out there aren't the busiest ones. Often they're practically the people who forgot their own login password.
Doing nothing feels lazy on the surface, yet deliberate, unglamorous patience is genuinely some of the highest paid work available to you.
Every misstep at this stage tends to be loud, flashy, and urgent. Every correct move stays quiet, patient, and forgettable.
So which kind of investor do you actually want to be 5 years from today? The one chasing headlines or the one who quietly stopped needing them?
You've already cleared the toughest stretch. You got to the milestone. Don't talk yourself out of the win now.
Protect it, automate it, and calmly, deliberately step outside your own way. There's a beautiful irony buried in all this. The less you interfere with it, the more it quietly grows.
Derek finally figured it out. His real job was never beating the market, only outlasting his own worst instincts.
That's the whole game once you hit 750K. Guard the number, protect the quiet habits that built it, and let time handle everything else.
So let's bring this home to your own situation. No matter where your personal number currently sits, $50,000 or already well past 750K, because the takeaway doesn't change.
The skills that carry you to a number are rarely the same skills required to hang on to it.
Reaching it rewards hustle, hanging on to it rewards restraint, and that second lesson almost never gets taught.
The moment you finally cross this line yourself, skip the celebratory spending spree. Celebrate by protecting what you've built instead. Freeze your spending, trim your fees, automate everything possible, and shore up your downside protection.
Then ease off entirely and allow compounding to handle the remaining climb toward $1 million.
Remember, at this size, the market can move more value in a single day than you're capable of saving across an entire year. So staying composed is worth far more right now than raw hustle.
Guard it the way you'd guard any hard-earned asset.
If any of this just exposed something quietly happening inside your own finances, here's the easiest way to help. Tap like on this video and subscribe to Novira Invests so the next milestone never
catches you flat-footed. We spend our time unpacking the quiet math behind the financial choices you deal with every single day.
Run your own numbers, then make the calm, unglamorous choice that actually fits your real life, not somebody else's polished sales pitch, because the wealth you safeguard will always outlive the
wealth you were chasing.